We're back again today to the Israeli Museum. In earlier episodes, we have filmed within the archaeological wings of the Israeli Museum, showing biblical artifacts dating back from the time of Abraham all the way to the time of Jesus. I'm standing on the rooftop of the Shrine of the Book, where the Dead Sea Scrolls are on display, but that is not the topic we're going to be handling today. We are going to follow up on an earlier episode which was filmed with my colleague Shafiq, who gave us a great intro into the topography of Jerusalem and the development of Jerusalem from the time of David through time of King Hezekiah all the way to the time of Christ. So we're going to go back to the model of the city in 3 short episodes. The first one, Herodian Jerusalem, Jerusalem that Jesus saw. The second episode, we're going to go on and cover up the passion of Christ within the city. And the third one, we're going to go on and do like a roundup tour of the Temple of Jerusalem. Join me, and hopefully you'll be enjoying a tour of Jerusalem as it looked like 2,000 years ago. If you're visiting Jerusalem today, definitely you would go to the Mount of Olives for a panoramic view of the city the way it would look like today. But from here, we're approaching Jerusalem from the east, as if we're coming to the top of the Mount of Olives, overlooking Jerusalem from the east to the west. Et voila! Here, the city of Jerusalem, dominated by the Temple of Jerusalem, which at that time used to be one, if not the largest temple in the world, covering a space of 42 acres. The city itself, that Jesus knew, covered a space of more or less 242 acres. So the Temple Mount, the Temple platform, it's about 1/6 of the city. Looking over the model itself is on a scale of 1 to 50. Made mostly of similar material that Jerusalem was made or built with 2,000 years ago. The model is dating back to the 1960s, hosted by the Israeli Museum, and it is not a word which came down from heaven. There are some things over here which we have a question mark on them, and as we go on with excavations within the city of Jerusalem, we're updating the model from time to time to go on and meet up with the new excavations and the way things would have looked like 2,000 years ago. It's very important to remember that the model over here shows us Jerusalem as it looked like in the year 70 AD, on the eve of its destruction at the hands of the Romans. Actually, we're just coming right now to the northern part of the city of Jerusalem, to what we call today Mount Scopus. This is where Titus would have stood scoping over Jerusalem. Now, why this is important to point out that this model shows Jerusalem in the year 70 AD? Because Jerusalem that Jesus knew was a bit smaller than what we have today. Interesting, Josephus Flavius goes on describing it as the old city and the new city. We have to come and take a fragment out of the model to get into Jerusalem that Jesus knew, Jerusalem which was transformed by Herod the Great, which is going to be our focal point. So let's go first and point for you the third wall, take it out, and then indulge into the city that Jesus knew. So we're coming to the foot of the Mount of Olives. That's the reason why they have the olive trees over here, as if we're just walking into the area of the Garden of Gethsemane. And we're going to be approaching the city from the eastern side at the eastern pinnacle of the temple. So we're starting from here, and that's where we go on to point out or to take out the third wall. So we go along the wall, we can see the sheep gate over here, which leads all the way into the pools of Bethesda. That's the 2 pools over there with the 5 porticos surrounding it. Looking at the city of Jerusalem and what Herod added into it. Let's start with what probably would have been the first building to be erected by Herod the Great, a magnificent building, which is known as the Antonia Fortress. That's a fortress which was located at the northern tip of the temple, yet let's take in consideration that it was not attached to the temple. The temple and the Antonia would have been attached to one another only around the year 18 BC. Antonia Fortress, dedicated to Mark Antony, Herod's patron, the ruler of the East, who in those days ruled all the way from Egypt alongside Cleopatra. The fortress consisted of 4 towers. On average, each tower was about 23 meters high. That's more or less around 80 feet high, except for the one which was located at the northern southern part, which was 10 meters higher. That brings it to around 100 feet high. The Antonia was divided all the way into 2 barracks, or 2 halls, one which functioned as a residential area, and the second part would have been the barracks for the soldiers, overlooking the temple. Let's remember, the Antonia later on would be the place where, according to tradition, Jesus stood his judgment in front of Pontius Pilate. And we can still see the moat of the Antonia Fortress, which was dug by Herod the Great, so deep, a pool called the Struthian, that is the little sparrow, at the northern end of the fortress. Part of that pool is still visible nowadays along the Via Dolorosa, or let's say under the Via Dolorosa at the Ecce Homo monastery or convent. A stairway, we can see, came out of the fortress, which led all the way to the streets of Jerusalem and into the city itself. Actually, it comes all the way into the Tyropean. From there, you could go north all the way to the gates of Ephraim, or you can go south along the western wall of the temple. The next magnificent building that we can see are the 3 towers which Herod constructed, most probably between the years 31 to 28 BC. These are located at the northern part of the city, north and western part of the city, and their purpose was to protect the city from the north. Solid bases, Phasaeli after his brother, Hippicus Tower after his best friend, and Mariana Tower after his favorite wife, which by the way he executed later on out of jealousy and suspecting that she was plotting against him. These 3 towers, by the way, would have been the only thing that Rome would not destroy in the year 70 AD. Walk inside the Jaffa Gate nowadays, you can still go and see the Phasaeli Tower standing almost at 50 meters height. Right next to it, Herod constructed the Twin Palace. 31 to 28 BC, a new emperor is ruling over the Roman world. His name is Augustus Caesar. That's Herod's new patron. The palace consisted of 2 identical halls, bathhouse, swimming pools, which even parts of it were discovered through the recent archaeological digs at David Citadel. The Twin Palace, the 2 halls, were dedicated to Marcus Agrippa, that's Caesar deputy, and to Augustus Caesar. This actually is one of the areas where usually Roman governors would have resided at later on. Herod himself might have resided over there, where earlier he would have resided at the Hasmonean Palace, which we can see a bit further down in the city, with 2 cone-shaped domes, which were built in the 1st century BC. From the Twin Palace, we go outside it, and that's where we have the Xistus, the market. Then, Upper Jerusalem, that's where the aristocracy lived. Annas the high priest, Caiaphas the high priest, even John Mark, the author of the Gospel of Mark. He was a member also of the aristocracy. All these people lived in the upper part of Jerusalem. Nearby them, surprisingly, we can see a theater as well as a hippodrome. Now, this does not make sense. It's not logical to have these 2 buildings in Jerusalem, as they were symbol of paganism. However, Josephus Flavius does mention that Herod the Great erected them. We have no archaeological evidence to approve it or disapprove it. As a result of that, we keep them there in situ. The jewel in the crown. the Temple of Jerusalem that we are going to come and describe in a separate episode. This is Jerusalem that Jesus knew, the one which was built by Herod the Great. This is Jerusalem that Jesus would have visited with his family when he was 12 years old, and the Temple of Jerusalem, which became a center of his Jerusalem ministry. This is Jerusalem that have witnessed his passion, which also we're going to be handling with the next episode as we come and talk about the passion route of Jesus in Jerusalem.